So I hope yesterday the exercise was not too much difficult. But again, as David said in the chat, you will do a quick recap. And we also hope that everyone was able to at least log in. So, but bear with us. You will make sure that no one is left behind. Okay, so we have approximately already, I mean, yeah, 30, 35. So in a minute or two, I think we can start. Fine, David, Casper, Valentina. Okay, once again, welcome. So David, are you?
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Okay.
Hey, how are you? It's funny to see Cyril, Valentina, and myself with the same background, no? It's like we are living in the same building, no? I'm in the first floor, Cyril is in the second floor, Valentina is in the third floor. But actually, your plants are on the right side. Mine, I see it in the left side. I don't know exactly if it's the same. So good morning, everyone. I hope you had a good evening. And also good morning. And then I know that some of you have been facing issues with the system. So the idea for today is to start with 30 minutes of practice and explain a bit about what is going on and recap a bit about the exercise of historical demand to try to address some of the issues. I think some of the issues that you are facing with the latency are related to the filtering, to be honest, because I've seen some of the screenshots that you were sharing, and I see plants that are not assigned to you. So I'm going to make sure we do a recap of how to filter properly and how to access historical demand. And then we will give you some minutes to practice, and we will try to assist the ones having issues. For those that didn't have any issue with the exercise and they're going faster, sometimes it happens, our colleagues all shared with you another exercise sheet. So for every exercise, you got some data assigned. But for those who finish the exercise quickly, we send you some extra data for you to practice. So you have more product IDs, and so you get more familiar. For those that you were facing some issues, let's try to complete at least the one assigned to you. So did you receive, if you can reply on the chat, did you receive another document that says extra exercise sheet with extra data, something like that? I think you got them by email. So if you can reply, yes, okay, Eleanor, thank you. You're always very, very fast replying. So that's good. This is extra data for you assigned only to you that will allow you to practice further. So we have, let's say, the most conservative objective is to complete the exercise that we sent. But if you go beyond, you can continue and get more familiar with the system. Now, I'm going to share my screen now and do a quick recap of how to use the historical demand template. Very quickly, only 5 minutes, and then we will give you time to do it. And also I will give the floor to Casper to explain something about the latency issue. I'm sure some of the issues that you're facing are also related to filtering. So there might be some system issue, but it's also something that it happened to me when I don't realize that I'm filtering. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Casper, I will give you the floor after the demo, if you don't mind. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now. I hope you can see it. Now we will not see the, okay, so here is the system. Yeah. Okay, now I don't see any chat or anything, so just if there is anything, just Valentina and Cyril let me know. I hope we have everybody on board. So this is the system, right? I'm going to open a new template. This one that you see here is actually historical demand already. So I'm going to open a new template. Okay, so when you select the historical demand data, it is very important that before you click on OK, you go to the filter. In the exercise, we mentioned that attributes you don't need to touch, keep figures, etc. The time you can verify. But it's very important that you go out to the filter and filter it actively. Because if you don't and you click on OK the first time and then you expect to filter later, the system will take a lot of time to load all the data because we'll get data for all the plants. So if you filter, most of the cases when we are doing the test, is not taking that much. So you have to click on the plant, select the plant as an attribute, and then enter the value, and then click on OK. So it will take a bit of time, but not 10 to 15 minutes as is happening often. Okay, here I have two different ones. So in the meantime, if you want, so this is a very simple step. In the meantime, could you please access the system and do it yourself? So if you have issues with Connect, I think already finished, right? Look, yeah, it already finished. So it doesn't take like 10 to 20 minutes. So we need to capture when this is related to, so see now it's preparing data consumption history. So it's changing the steps. And now we have the new template with the data generated. So as you saw, it took like what, 1 minute, which is maybe is not so fast, but not necessarily is like 10 or 15 minutes. So I'm going to kindly ask you to do only these steps, and then let's see if it works for you.
Just a quick question. Oh.
Yeah.
So maybe the same thing, Valentina, that you wanted to say. Some people are not seeing your screen. Is it our team only, or everyone was able to see David's screen?
No, I'm sharing again. Can you see my screen?
1 second.
Please, could you confirm? Okay, that's fine. I believe for as what I suspected is the latency issue for our team. So it's okay now for him. Okay, proceed, okay. David, fine.
So what I said is very important. When you open the template, this is very important, especially for those who are facing the system very slow. Before, when you select the template, let me repeat it again. When you select the template historical data, before clicking on OK, you have to filter. When you will go to production, this will not happen to you because the user access you will have will only give you access to your, let's say, entity. But in the training environment, your user have access to all plants. So please do this, enter the plant, and then click on OK, and let's see if it takes 10 minutes or it's not slower. Yes, Valentina.
Can you go back? Sorry. Can you go back to the profile view, please? I just want to mention something. It happened assisting one of our students. Go to filter, please. Yes. Mm-hmm. And when we filter, we use the field below attribute, which is not. Somebody try to filter from a filter, the one that is an attribute-based filter, which is the field just above. So be sure that you select your attribute that you want to filter by, choosing whatever is below attribute operated a value. That's the only thing. So there is still somebody cannot see the screen. Yeah, that's all, David.
Okay, so please do it. And if you cannot see my screen, what I'm basically doing is opening the template and selecting the filter, which is also in your exercise. So please proceed, do it now, everybody, especially those who reported latency issues, and let us know. I give you like 5 minutes to do this.
Yeah. So David, what you can do, maybe you can stop sharing and then you reshare
Yes.
back again to see if you can display
Exactly.
back.
So please do this, and because we are reporting latency issues also to Moja, and we want to make sure that it's not an issue of not filtering. So 5 minutes, huh? So it's now 12:10. So at 12:15, I expect you to give me something. So when I say it's a filtering issue, what I mean is that it's not a filtering issue, is that we forget as a users to filter for our entity. So it's not an issue of the tool itself. It's like it's too much information to download in one shot. Okay, Elizabeth. Yeah, and as I said, filtering is not a must for you when you will use the system in production, because you have your entity. But just for the training, for the sake of this exercise, we need to do it because we have like all the user with access to everything, and all the data is messed up. So it's more for the sake of the exercise. So Elizabeth, can you share do you mind to share your screen?
Yeah.
Since you said that you're getting the Excel empty.
I will also,
if you don't mind.
Let's see.
I will also
Manju, yes.
move it.
time that filtering would help to reduce the cognitive load you would have looking at all the information on the screen. So even if the latency gets better in terms of bringing multiple plants data, you would be looking at so much data at the same time that it would simply be a lot to work with. So the filtering is your best way to have your focus on what you really want to look at.
So, okay. Yeah, thank you, Himanshu. So
It's
Elizabeth,
telling
did
me
you
I
open
don't
the...
have, yeah, I'm trying to, it's telling me I don't have capacity to share. I don't have enough internet.
So go to, because I saw that the template maybe was not opened. After you logged in, right, you have to go to new view and open the template.
No, it's just I'm sharing the wrong screen. It's difficult to see which one to share. Let's see. Sorry. Where did that book go?
No worries. We can also take it offline. It's just that if it's a common issue, others can.
No, what I was asking is when I open, before I load my view, my Excel sheet is empty. Whereas I saw that before you load your view, your Excel sheet is already populated. So I'm wondering if we are reloading the data from scratch every single time we enter the system.
No, you are right, because when I share my screen, I was already doing something before. When you access to IBP, it's empty. Then when you click on new template and historical data and you select the filter, you will get all the data. But the first time you access, yeah, the spreadsheet is empty, yeah, until you select the template. So that's normal behavior.
Okay, so I'm trying to filter now for 6 minutes and counting.
Okay, so you entered
I entered plant, I entered the time component.
Okay, so what plant did you select?
IL20.
IL20, okay. Okay, so that's a kind of example, yeah.
I think it is good to know, because even if we look at from the perspective that this is just training environment, and we're looking at a very small set of data within the plans also, the time will come when all our data will be there, and as you start the filtering and everything, there's a lot more information coming in. So it's definitely a feedback need to taken back to Umoja to see what can be done. I think Pasquale is on the call as well, and
yeah, Casper wanted to share something about it. So.
Yes.
So, go ahead.
So as Himanshu was saying, currently we are in the initial phase. So also, as everyone is aware, we are logging in via the Brindisi link. So it also means that we're in the developing stage for the Citrix add-on, which means that we are very happy with all the feedback we're receiving with regards to latency, because we have been testing the past few months, and on our side it's going well. But of course, now that we're rolling it out to other users all over the world, there will be other experiences. So do keep us informed on your latency challenges, so to say. And do know, as Himanshu was pointing out, that we have escalated it to Umoja and to the Citrix team in Bangkok. So they are aware, they are working on it, and we hope to resolve it shortly. The other point which was raised by David, it's very important to perform filters. Even if you perform filters and you experience the latency issues, do reach out to us and let us know.
Yes, thank you, Casper. Himanshu, yes, the team in Bangkok is monitoring also this training. So this is a big opportunity. The training, I see is going very well, but we are taking this opportunity also to monitor the performance of the Citrix environment, which is on a deployment environment now. It's not in production. So production will have more resources to support the connection for sure, but this is a good week to monitor also the Citrix development, because we have to also to remember everyone that this is a development environment, so we are still in testing phase. Thank you all for giving and sharing your feedback. Will be very good for us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pasquale. Cyril Valentin.
David,
Go ahead.
David, just to mention, we have to take, I understood your point, and I take note of colleagues saying that bigger capacity will be once solution is deployed. But we have to think that filtering will not help for those users that are centrally performing, that they will do a lot of function without filtering by plants. So when it comes to capacity, filtering cannot be solution. Capacity should be sufficient to be done centrally without filtering. In my experience, it takes, yesterday it took almost two hours to get the entire set of data when you don't do filtering. Yeah, just that.
Yeah, well noted.
Yes, really well noted.
Yeah, so here we are facing with double, like a short-term problem, which is try to have the exercises performing, and the important issue is, as you said, the capacity and the performance. So that part is Casper taking note of it and dealing with Umoja. But very good point, because I tend to forget that there are some users that access all the data from the HQ. Now, Casper, if you don't mind, I was asking Francia to have a separate call, but maybe it's better if you can see with her, because she's using the same plant I'm using. And for me, it took like 1 minute. So maybe if you can call her on the side while I'm doing a recap of what we saw yesterday, because I think she already saw it yesterday as well. Yes. So if you don't mind, Francia, to show your issue.
Yes, it's okay. Actually, my Excel is frozen, but I believe it's internet issues, because today I was chatting to Eleanor about this, and we were both facing issues, and I can hear that Elizabeth is also facing issues, and the three of us, were in Israel right now. So maybe it's an internet common issue now in the country.
Okay. Anyway, if you want Casper to investigate a bit, because that's the same plant I used. So
yes,
and then she's filtering because I saw it.
And I'm sorry, last night, I guess Eleanor can mention more, but what happened to us today, and when I was discussing, I was trying to download my data, and even it took so long that the computer kicked me off. You know, I get out of the Moya, and then I have to restart the whole thing, and I have to redo. And Eleanor was telling me it happened to her last night too. So I think it's taking too long.
Okay, all right. So it's up to you then, Casper, if you want to follow up with her with that new information. That is important. Okay, that was something that I wanted to. Okay, that's something that I wanted to see before we do the recap, and then for the demonstration, I think we will take it later after the presentation. We have today to discuss about automatic data cleansing, and then we will do a demonstration on the system that will be a portion of it will be on the historical data template. That is the end of the process, and a portion will be on the automatic data cleansing. So maybe Valentina is okay if we start with the presentation, or if there are any questions from yesterday about the historical data. If anybody has a pending question from historical data, we address it, and then we start with the automatic cleansing.
David, can I ask one question about the exercise yesterday?
Yes, of course. Yes, please.
Yeah, on the last page, page number 10, step number 26. Mm-hmm. It says that when you go to the automatic data cleansing, are we going to do this today, or it was part of yesterday's exercise?
Today we will. Let me go to the step 26 because I don't remember exactly. One second. Yeah. Today we are going to the automatic data cleansing. That's for sure. But let me see what step you are referring to. So one moment. Please give me one moment. Please, when you speak, if you don't mind, it would be good to know your name and your entity because I cannot see anything.
Okay, this is the ad from UNMIS.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, the exercise, historical navigation, step 26. One moment. So it's on page. What page are you referring to, Sihad?
10.
Okay. Exactly. This is what we are going to do today. So if you're that's good. You reach that point that you complete the full exercise.
Yes,
yeah. So today now we are going to do always the structure of the class is to have an overview about the concepts and maybe a discussion about the business if required, and then we will go and we'll perform the demonstration. On the demonstration, we will finish, we will show the last steps of historical demand template for historical consumption, and we will go to automatic cleansing. So yeah, that is what we are going to do today. If you reach that step, it's a good sign, actually.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So Valentina, if it's okay with you, we can start the automatic cleansing. You are muted.
Yes.
Okay. So over to you.
Should be this one and this one. So let me go to the beginning and here. Okay. So everybody sees the screen. David, can you hear me?
Yeah, Valentina, I think you can see also the participants are seeing the screen.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to start from what we left yesterday before introducing this new concept, a new procedure process. Let me recap from what we left yesterday. So yesterday we say that the gross demand is consists of 3 elements, and the first element is a statistical forecast. So today we are going to see a 3-step process called classification, and we are going to focus on the data cleansing, which is going to be also the process that David is going to explain in the solution. Then Monday, we are going to go ahead with the segmentation, and finally, we are going to have the statistical forecast as the first element. You remember, we are going to say over and over This is not the final gross demand. The gross demand is also complemented by the demand related to requirement of entity omission projects and the additional demand, that demand that takes care of the equipment, which is a big issue, apparently talking issue. This is not an issue, and requirement products without historical consumption data. Now, we are going to go through the step end-to-end process by step to step. So yesterday we saw that historical data is the first process of calculating the statistical forecast. It started with loading the consumption history from Umoja production, which is the input in this template. Then the planner has a very important role during this first process because he has to analyze and adjust the consumption data. We saw which the two cases that are most common for that intervention from the planner. The final history is the output of this process. So the final history is going to be the input that the classification is going to use. And after the classification is run, the data cleansing is going to look at this final history, classified by the process classification. The result of this process, the output, will be the cleansed history, which will be the input of the statistical forecast with the help of the segmentation is going to run before. Remember, this is a process that gives crucial information to the planner in order for him or her to prioritize which product or group of products should forecast first. Now, the output, as we know, is the final statistical forecast, the first element of the gross demand, and then again the demand coming from the referring to the requirement for to run the entity omission project, the equipment demand that is going to add to the additional demand, and then we will have the gross demand, the final result, outcome of this process. Now, so let's start. Before starting, I want to warn you about two words that I'm going to use in this presentation. Might sound very, very familiar to you, but I'm just going to go ahead and say that I'm going to refer to the data that we have from ECC, the data organized here in the template of the historical data by month, as you can see. You know this template quite well by now. Now, I'm going to refer to this number as time series. What is a time series? Time series is simply a sequence of data, a series of data, all right, listed in time order. So this is a time series. So I'm going to use this term, and I want to be sure that everybody understands what I'm referring to. I pause 1 second because now I'm just gonna go ahead and explain classification. I want to know if there is any question. No?
No questions.
No, so far.
Okay. All right. So classification. As I say, this is done by the system. It's performed by the system. So there is no action required. Well, there is action required to run this process, but the information is classification is gonna derive, is gonna be informative on the following process. So the classification, what it does is classify the final consumption history. So what does it mean, classify? What is the purpose of this? Okay, so I know that you can read. I'm just going to explain this and not necessarily following the same word. So what classification does is just consists of technique that analyze that time series, and in order to understand the underlying causes. So why this series behave in this way? And this is important, crucial, and indispensable to generate a statistical forecast. So a statistical forecast is a forecast based on data. And the classification, again, it looks at this data and it tries to understand with algorithms that which is the reason why these data are presented in this way, why they behave in this way. So what it looks for? It looks for trend, seasonality, intermittence. We are going to explain what that means. So these characteristic that the classification used to classify the final consumption histories are continuous with seasonality, continuous with seasonality and trend, continuous with trend, intermittent, and so on. Now, the first things I want to focus on is the fact that we have a classification that is actually classified this final consumption history is continuous and intermittent. So let's see what continuous means and intermittent means. Continuous is very easy. It's actually, I think I can actually use this. You see, continuous means that in a time series, for each time point, time period, I have a value. So it's continuous. Now, that continues with seasonality. Seasonality, intermittent, I was talking about intermittent. It's just like the row before the last one. I have several zero value, several. So it means that there is a large number of periods for which I don't have value. I have zero. The forecast for this is more difficult and is not treated in the same way of the continuous. And this is important to remember to understand what the system is going to do in few minutes. I'm going to explain in a few minutes. So to go through the different characteristics, so we have continuous with seasonality. Seasonality means that a pattern repeats over a specific time period. So it can be every week, every month, every season, every 3 months. So every 3 months we notice that there is an increase or decrease. Trend is very similar, but it's not the same thing for sure. It's just a linear increasing or decreasing behavior that follows a predictable pattern. You might remember, of course, what happened with the COVID. Everybody was trying to understand the trend of the behavior of the consequence, actually, of the disease on people that were infected. So they were looking for a trend. So it was increasing. They were expecting to increase that the trend, and then eventually, thank God, it decreased. So this is, I don't know how familiar you might be with this concept, so I'm just going very, I'm not going very in the specifics, so I would like to stop 1 second before go ahead. I just want to be sure that it's clear what is a time series is, why we have to classify this time series, and what's the result of this classification. Are those 3 concepts explained well? You want me to, there are any questions?
Yeah, I think they are clear, Valentina. We already get some feedback from Eleanor. So if someone has a question, please ask, because that is the basis for the following slides. Yeah, good feedback, Valentina. So.
Okay. So the next, I already showed this. So you see that we're going to see this in graphics. That is very good because numbers might obviously tell you something, especially sequence, but the graphs are more easy to understand. So we will have graphs. So I want to talk 1 second before going into what the system does with this data. You might see after the classification is run, you might see that the system warns you that some data are insufficient. What that means? It means that they are not, they don't meet the minimum requirement to be used as a baseline for a forecast. This happens when we are going to see very simple. It's a very simple case. It might sound complicated, but it's not. So in the data points that we receive from Umoja, if we have a time series with more than 5 data points, the system can run the classification. And it will say, okay, this time series continuous, it has a seasonality, or is intermittent. Okay, so we have a minimum data that we need for the classification and for all the entire process to go ahead. So if we have less than 5 data points, so if over a 25 period, we have 21 missing, the system it will say you have insufficient data. So what do you do here? You go back to the historical data and you check if that is an error, that you know that actually that particular month you had a consumption. So so in that case you fix it. So you adjust. And the next run, the classification, it will look to this data were not included before, and it will classify. Might be complicated here, but I think once you see the data, or some of you might already know what can be the case. But that if you see insufficient data, that's exactly what happened. All right, this is a graphic representation of data. So you can see this is a represent continuous. As I said, continuous for each period, we have a value. And you can see clearly that this represents a time series that just continues. So every month I have a value. Here, the next one. Every 2 or 3 months, there is a rise or a fall. So that's a season. So that data is, they have every, I think here is 2 months, that there is a increase and then a decrease. And then after 2 months, the behavior repeats. So that's a season. A trend. As you see, the COVID, there is an upwards or downwards shift in the data set over the time. So this obviously is a trend, expect to eventually continue to erase, or in the case I used for the COVID, decrease. Salvatore, you are requesting control.
No, by mistake. I'm sorry, by mistake. Sorry.
No, I know it's going to affect my the animation. So I'm going to deny. Okay, don't worry. I mean, I don't get it. So no. All right. So here we have continues with seasonality and trend, which means that I have a raise or a decrease. Which is a cost, which is linear in the sense that it happens, but it also follow a season. So it happens following a period of time. So the pattern is not only a pattern of decrease on fall, but it has also a time influence on that. All right, this is a representation of intermittent. Means that for many large of value are 0, as you can see here, there is a sudden raise and then a decrease, and then for a few months I don't have anything, and then I have a completely different values. So these data are obviously cannot be forecast in the same way of continuous. It's just the algorithm that works for one, it will not work for the other. So we will see. So it will be more clear why we are making this distinction in a couple of slides. So this is an intermittent that follow a seasonality pattern. And the next one, okay, so the next one is the data cleansing. Okay, so I stop 1 second here. What I just did is just show the representation, a graphic representation of this classification. So if there are no questions, I'm going to introduce the data cleansing. So the data cleansing is the process that has as outcome the cleanse history that is going to serve as baseline for the forecast, for the statistical forecast. So as you can see from this box, it is very clear stated that this data cleansing is applied only to the time series that are classified as continuous. So that's why we stress the point of the distinction between continuous and intermittent. This is purely because the algorithms that are used to generate a statistical forecast, they need a time series that behave as continuous to be accurate. The input will be of the data. It will go in the data cleansing process, and the cleansing process will prepare this data for the statistical forecast, performing two activities. One is called substitute misvalue, and the second one is called outlier correction. They are not wrong data, so it's the word correction or missing doesn't have to make you think that something wrong with the data. It's just a preparation for the statistical forecast. So the preparation of the data. So now so the end of this process, we will have the cleanse history. So you are going to see today the template that is used by the solution, and David is going to show you how it works. It's called auto cleansing, and what it does, as I say, it prepares the data classified as continuous for generating statistical forecast. So we see this is how it looks like. As you can see, okay, you are already familiar with that. The name change is called 20 auto cleansing. You have your data here. The key figure, you can see they change, and they are related to the process that is performed at this moment by the solution using this template. You can see the time series classification. I don't have intermittent data. I don't have insufficient data, which is very good. Obviously, I don't have intermittent data because this is only for continuous. So let's see the first activity that the solution will perform. So it substitute missing value. So the purpose of this pre-processing step is to identify gaps and replace them. I'm going to show you in a second a gap, but a gap it can be that in a continuous time series, one value is missing. And so even though this can reflect a reality, in terms of generating statistical forecasts, this can be a noise, in the sense it can be something that the system doesn't know how to explain. So we fix this, the solution fixed this using a mean configure. So again, only applicable to continuous time series. So what this box means that the system identifies the gaps, so where the value is missing, and it calculates the mean value. So the arithmetic average of all the value that you have in the time series divided by the number of the data value, if we have the mean, the arithmetic average. So what it does, it calculates the arithmetic average, and we have now the graph. You will understand now. This is the missing value in May 18. So I have a continuous, and then May nothing, I have 0. So this 0, which is the, all right, is the solution calculate the mean. Okay, the mean here obviously is considering all the value that you have here, and what it does, then it assigns to that particular period, assign that value, the mean value. So in this way, when the algorithm used to generate the statistical forecast will not be blocked by a missing value. So this is the first thing that the system does. You can see on the top where all the series are, the 627.5 is the value of the mean that it goes to replace the 0 of May 18. Now, so this is just a summary of what I just explained. So the substitute missing value is a process that identifies the gaps and replace them. Applies only on data series. They are classified continuous with seasonality, and trend, and continuous with trend. It does not fix or change. It doesn't apply to intermittent time series. Now, the second activity of this auto cleansing is called outlier correction. So the purpose of this pre-processing step is to identify outliers in the time series and replace them. It's done only for continuous data and not for intermittent data. Now, what is an outlier? It's very simple. In a sequence of data, it's a value that differs significantly from the others. So think about data that are from a range of 10 to 100, and this data is 500. So this is an outlier. And this can be a noise. For a noise is a variation in the observation that cannot be explained by a mathematical model. So we have to fix that too, as much as the gap that we had before, the missing value that we had before. So how we identify? So now we are going to go a little bit into math. I don't know if this can be a good news or bad news for you. For the ones that don't like math, this is very simple. How we identify it. So what is an outlier? We know that it significantly differ from the other value. So how do we measure this? We use something called variance and standard deviation. The variance, what it does? First of all, of this series, of this sequence of a value, we calculate the arithmetic average, all right? Then we see each value, how much is differs, or how much is, we measure how much is different, the single data from the arithmetic average, all right? And then that's the variance. So the variance measures how far a set of number is spread out from its average value. And the standard deviation is just the arithmetic average of the variance. So this is not have to be digested right now. Just to say that there is a very much precise way to identify what an outlier is. Whoever is interested in the background, a mathematical background of what I'm explaining, we can send you reference material. Otherwise, this is just, I think, has to receive as it is. We know what an outlier is because there are mathematical formulas that allow us to identify and to say this is an outlier, okay? So how the system acts, it replaces this value with a tolerance value. A tolerance value, I'm going to show you in the graphic what it is, and also is a result of mathematical procedures and formulas. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. As I say, graphic is beautiful because it explains everything. So we have here a sequence of time series, a sequence of values, and you can see that there are two values that you can actually, they are visible, depart from the others, right? So the others are more or less on the same, they have the same peak, and then you have a peak of 1,390 that it goes up, and before you have a lower value comparing to the lowest value of the sequence with 600. So you can see it's 190. So the solution immediately recognizes these two values and what it does. Okay, we know from even the activity of before, it calculates the arithmetic average, which is mean, and then it's, you can see this green line, one is called upper bound and the other one is called lower bound. This is the tolerance. So for the solution, it says, look, these are the data I have. For me, an outlier cannot be above that line, the green line, the upper bound, which I think is 1,000, and the lower bound, the lower value, cannot be lower than 400. So this is calculated how? The upper bound is the mathematical average plus 3 times the standard deviation, and the lower bound is the mean minus 3 times the standard deviation. Again, if you are interested in this, I'm happy to send. Yes. Yeah.
Valentina. So if I may, there are some questions that we will address because after we finish, we can come back to some of the, let's say, patterns and some other, but there is a good point from Elizabeth that it opens the door for me to clarify something. We are explaining, this is a process that the system does, as Valentina said, to prepare the data for the forecasting, and it detects some anomalies that from a statistical point of view are weird and are difficult to process. We are explaining this to you not because you have to take action, because you need to be aware of the importance of adjusting historical data to reflect reality. For example, a good comment from Elizabeth said, if we have, if we pay January and February invoices together, for example, I mean, it's not related to the payment, but about when we process service entry sheets. What happens if for 3 months we are not processing service entry sheets? And then we do it in the third month, I mean, and then it's done in the third month. You might have a situation when in 2 months you have gaps, you have zeros. And in the third month, you have an outlier. You have let's say, a consumption too high for the series. If this situation is, if you found out this situation when you are doing historical demand review, historical consumption, sorry, you should adjust the data to reflect reality, because consumption did not happen in the third month. What happened is that the transaction was done late, right? So if this is a typical example where you can have a gap. If the transaction did not take place, you might have a gap. So if you don't correctly reflect in reality, the system might fill the gap, because if you have a constant pattern and then all of a sudden you have a zero, something weird has happened, right? So if it's very important that if you identify the gaps, you go and review your historical data to make it reflect reality. If the example that Elizabeth wrote in the chat, would have been adjusted on the historical data on the first template, then the system wouldn't take any action. So, as a second example as well, like for example, yeah, another example could be like you have the transaction, but then the transaction was reversed and then it was never processed again. So yeah, that is very important for you to be aware that the system has this process to prepare the data for the forecasting. So it's important that if you notice that an outlier has been cut, or if you notice that a gap has been filled, you can revisit the historical data and see what was the reason for that to have a 0 in the middle of a continuous series of 24 months. Okay. And there is another question from Herbert. If the outlier itself includes.
David, sorry, before you go to the third question, I just want to point out, thank you for that. It's very good because we might have I might have given the impression that these are separated processes, but this is not the case. Remember yesterday we said that the first step for a statistical forecast to be delivered at the end of the fifth process is the historical data. So that actually the preparation of the data starts with the planner and with his analysis in the historical data. So these processes are not separated from each other. It's a process that consists on several step processes. So as you said, if you have to, before saying that the final consumption history is final, you have to be sure all the data are prepared to go there. And just the case that Elisabeth said, that will imply that the plan.
Okay, there is some feedback.
Yeah, no, there is we have to be sure that you mute. Yeah, so go ahead with the other question.
No, that's fine. I think Dinesha wants to add something. And then after you finish the presentation, Valentina, we will revisit the say classification examples, because there were some questions, but I think it's better to address it. Dinesha, you want to add something?
Yes, Valentina, if you could please go into gap filling as well. So just quickly recap from there.
Yeah. 1 second. You mean the slides, right? Or the graphic?
The first one. So out of the automatic cleansing, the first step is the gap filling. Let's just quickly go there, quickly recap, and then.
Yeah. From here?
Yes.
From here? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So what I wanted to quickly clarify, I'm not going to spend too much time, is when we say gap, what exactly do we mean by a gap? So gap could be that there was no transaction that took place in that month. Going back to Elizabeth's example, January, February, nothing was done. Come March, we paid an invoice. So technically January and February would be 0. But there also could be instances in terms of goods. We issued it out to a service delivery section and it was subsequently reversed. So that would consider as a 0. So there is the situation of blank and 0. The system will only fill if there is a 0. So what we need to understand is that the fact that system is not going to randomly, system will only fill in the blank. System will not fill in the 0, because blank means there was this gap in the transaction. 0 meant the positive and the negative, each it netted it out. So the system will fill the blank, assuming that the transaction would show a pattern. Going back to what David said, one of the things that we are doing through the pre-step that we did yesterday, cleaning historical data adjustment, is that we know in our entities that maybe we don't record our goods issues on time. So adjusting the historic data is important to make sure that we reflect what the pattern of the transaction took place. And eventually what this should lead to is that you as the planner should make sure that the service delivery sections or warehouses record the transactions on time, though the system will actually reflect the true consumption, and the adjustment should eventually not be significant as at the first 2 years. So when we go live, whenever we go live, the amount of adjustments that you're going to perform is going to be significant, because we've never really looked at our data in monthly buckets trying to understand the consumption pattern. Some of us may have, but some of us may have not have. So eventually, once that first 2-year period data is adjusted and cleansed, then the idea is that I keep hearing my own echo. So it's very hard. The idea is that eventually you should drive to make sure that each of your entities are recording transactions on time. So that's one thing I want to say. Just quickly going back to outlier correction. Yes, Ambreen also makes a valid point. If you recall Piro, with Piro, we did a lot of transactions where we went and corrected a lot of goods issues at the very tail end. So you might see lots of outliers, or you might see no transaction happening and suddenly peaks of transaction. So this is some of the things that you have to correct the first time we go live. It'll be a lot of effort initially, but eventually what this should introduce is a culture of making sure that our data is recorded on time. It's not recorded on manual issue vouchers, but it's actually recorded in the system. Quickly touching upon the outlier correction, this kind of goes back in to say that, I mean, the idea behind gap filling or the substitute missing values and outlier correction is to make sure that we create a good baseline for forecasting. If we put garbage, we'll get garbage out. So if we load the data as it is without not doing any historical data adjustments or not doing either the gap filling or the outlier correction, it's going to be to an extent some type of a garbage, and the forecast that we are going to create would be meaningless to us. So the intention behind the adjusting of the historic data and automatic cleansing is that we put somewhat of decent data into the system, so system will create somewhat of a valid forecast. And the forecast is not going to be accurate, like we said from day one. The forecast accuracy is just going to be a curve that's going to improve as we mature into this process and as we start using the tool. So you can't log in on day one and day 2 or month and say, oh, my forecast was crap and I'm not going to use it anymore. It's a process that we are going to mature into as well. And I think David already answered some of the questions. So the outlier is going to be 3 times the standard deviation, of the 3 times the standard deviation. And the standard deviation is based on your average. If you have average, it will take 3 times upper and 3 times lower and bring it to some type of a normalized curve. That's the intention. This is a functionality that's available for us, the system. But if I mean, one of the things that will clearly stand out in this case is equipment. We know vehicles, as soon as we receive it twice or three times a year, we will issue it out. And definitely that will probably look like a substitute missing value. But this is where one of the functionalities that the team is going to introduce, segmentation. You have the capability to identify what are my A products, what are my B products, what are my C products. And then there's also the other element of the variability coming through XYZ. I'm not going to deep dive into that. So the system will automatically propose a segmentation. However, you as the plan has the capability to say, for my mission, even though the data doesn't truly reflect this as an A product, I have the capability to override because I want to put more effort on it. Or this is a product that it's important, but I don't want to put too much effort on it. So these are some of the functionality that will be introduced. So don't sort of review this in isolation. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Dinesha. Just one more point I will say, which I know you guys are refraining from saying it. And a part of a bitter truth of our current practices and lifestyle is that looking at all the shopping carts in the last 7-8 years we're dealing with this, it is obvious that we spend a lot at the very tail end of our budget periods. And that's a reality. We do that. We look back at the money and we're like, well, let's get going. The hope is, from the strategic point of view, is that we kill that practice. We basically make sure that everybody is working on a monthly basis, looking at their needs and accurately reflecting that when they need something, not just to kind of consume the budget, which is the impression it gives many times when you just look at the data, especially the shopping cart data. So that's one of the culture that needs to be promoted through this thing, that eventually users are not simply cutting their shopping carts at the very tail end of their budget periods and just trying to consume just to make sure that they have it, because this will eventually start to reflect that data reality, and then the planning sections and everybody would have a little bit better say on not to do that. That's it. Just want to stop there.
All right. So Valentina, you are muted still. Valentina, we cannot hear you.
David, meantime, if I can just make some comments.
Yes.
Looking at the information and seeing certain issues like certain missing values and understanding that system cannot do any forecasting unless there is transaction, and that it will require that those information that are missing are covered through adjustments. I think it is important to look how do we repair and how do we moving forward learn what we need to do in order to get all this information. Not only replacing the values, but also moving forward. And you mentioned very good point to say you can see that, for example, service acknowledging service is missing, so it's not done periodically and so on. But I think what is also important to understand what kind of transaction is in baseline, because then user will have sense what is that transaction that I'm really looking for to perform. So yeah, I can moving forward not go through repairing something that is missing, but changing process and getting this information as part of day-to-day business. Or other just example, when I'm looking these outliers. Now I'm looking and I see outliers, but I don't understand what kind of data is there. Is there adjustment of stock there or not? Is there project or not? I would think that this is reoccurring demand, that anything that is related to specific project or specific adjustments, such as it's not there. So I think it's important, if we are looking and examining something, to understand what is foundation, what we are looking at, and also to know, also to focus on exception. What's happened if there is no data? Why did we come to this stage, having still missing, not having 5 data stamp points? Why we are moving to this stage if system cannot do next stage? I mean, to focus on exceptions and also understanding what is behind, what kind of transactions are behind, what is included, project, adjustment of stock. So when we are looking this practically, we have sense of what we need to do in order to get this one really realistically and have all information moving forward.
Thank you, Suleiman, because that's a very good question, and I think we will address it to also help others understand this. I think this we mentioned yesterday, but could we open? I mean, Valentina, if you want, we can finish this presentation and then we go to that point. I mean, I don't remember how many slides.
No, shall I go to the? No, we almost at the finish, but shall I go to the insufficient data, like to answer to Suli's question?
Okay, no, then let's address that question. So one of the questions from Suli is what type of transaction we are considering. So if you can open for a minute the slide from yesterday's presentation when we explained that are good issues, good receipts and service entry sheet. So in general, what we are considering in this, what the system is considering in this template as historical consumption, and then from there it will classify. There are different movement types that we share by email, but the main idea is that entities that have inventory, whenever the goods, if we are talking about the goods, leave the inventory because of a good issue, it will be considered as consumed. All right, it will show at least in the report. If the entity, and then of course we have to consider also the reversal. No, if they are issued out and then they are reversed, then it's different. We sent yesterday the list of movement type. Let's say the baseline of all the transactions. If the entity is not managing inventory, all the good receipt that will be processed will be considered as consumption. And if you know when the good receipt is processed, it will be also from a financial perspective, will be considered as expense. And then for the services, it is not when the invoice is processed, it is not when the invoice is paid. You have to consider that the key transaction there is the service entry sheet approval. All right. So the moment the service entry sheet is approved is where the consumption will happen. And then the service entry sheet has a posting date. So that is the posting date where the system is recognizing the expense. That is also aligned with finance. So these are the main 3 transactions that need to be clear, and this also would be also part of the final assessment, because we need to understand if we have a 0, what transaction did not happen? Because it's not a matter, as you say, Suleiman, of adjusting the historical consumption. We want the processes to be in place and in time and manner. So as part of the training strategy, we also have prepared, or we are preparing a series of training for for users that whose transactions impact the demand planning process. So we have to review our processes, also to understand if we get garbage, as Dinesh said, we have to try to fix it, but also in the long run, we need to make sure these transactions are processed properly. And then that is one important point I wanted to make. Your second question was about the exceptions. And then in order to deal with exceptions, I think we first need to advance more on the training, because we have different people with different understanding. We need to have a basic knowledge of the, let's say, of the happy flow, of the main concept, and then we will go to the boundaries. I understand that your understanding is deeper, so we will that maybe if you want to discuss this offline or later during this training, maybe next week. We will review the, let's say, the boundaries and the exceptions, if it's okay with you. Okay?
Thank you, David.
All right. Thank you. So Valentina, can we continue, please?
Well, we actually, I think we just, 1 second, because now I'm here, and let me close this. I should have opened this already. Yeah, but this is really the last slide. So what I showed before, it's remember we were here where the solution calculates what is the upper bound that is acceptable for this, considering the value of this time series, and the lower bound. So the next step is simply for the solution to match that value that was outlier, and lower or upper is just to draw that value to the tolerance value that it was calculated, and that's basically bring us to the end of this presentation. And as I anticipated before, on Monday, we will talk about segmentation and statistical forecast. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, so then thank you, Valentina. So then maybe it's a good moment. There were some questions about the classifications, I guess, because the slides were very good. And maybe we can go again briefly one by one, and then let the people ask a bit about it. So can we go to the first, let's say, time series? I also want to spend a minute to emphasize something. Okay, I'm not a business representative, but I think you all can see what is the beauty of this tool and this system and how powerful it is. If you didn't have this system, how are you going to analyze historical consumption of all the products and analyze and get trends, consumption trends individually? So you cannot, this information, it is very useful. And if you don't do it with a system like this, it will take you ages to do it at commodity level, at product level, and then analyzing all time series and getting the trends to get a possible forecast. I think if you learn how to use the solution, and then you apply your planner experience and your professional judgment, it really can make you do a better planning. So if we see these figures, they don't have, they are not telling us anything significant. So if we go to next slide.
The next slide is insufficient data. So wait.
That's okay. So
1 second.
I think that's important for everyone. And now Harry will have a question, so we'll let her. So insufficient data, it was only about letting you know that if there are less than 5 data points, the system will say it's insufficient to generate, let's say, a trend. This is typical example for fixed assets. You will see on the data that you will receive for the exercise. We are not, maybe if we are acquiring X-ray machines, we are not getting X-ray machines like so often to have a trend there. No? And then also replacement is based on operational useful life, maybe more. So could we go to the next one? I want to get the charts because the questions were about the charts.
Oh, so let's do it this, David. So I'm monitoring the chat and then we're answering a couple of questions here. So what we can do here is to address the issue of classification, as you said. Gomala wanted to understand, the difference between the different trends, continuous with seasonality, with trends. What are the difference? And also mention about the intermittence. For example, this is one. And then the second thing also is to reclarify. I think Stefan and Syed was mentioning about it. What is the main purpose of the adjustment? The data cleansing. So they wanted everyone to understand that, and Denisha said it already. It created a baseline, right?
Okay.
So
let's
that's
go.
the
Let's
two
go.
main points. And then the third one,
Didi.
I believe I have a couple of hands here. Maybe we will take one or two, Harriet and someone else.
Okay, David, 1 second. I would suggest to go from the third one. So, what's the purpose of the process, rather than explain the classification if this is not clear? So, as I said before, I don't know. I'm just gonna say what I said before. If it's not clear, maybe somebody can reword it in a different way. When you have the historical data, this process from this point to this point, when the system generates a statistical forecast, which is an estimation of what you are going to need in the next period, in the future. That's what a forecast is an estimation. So it's predicting, basing on your historical data, so basing on what you consume in the previous 24 months, is going to predict what you are going to need. So this is the final result of this process. This process starts with loading the ECC data from Umoja production. Then you adjust as needed. This step, the data cleansing, is a merely process that is needed because the final outcome is to generate a statistical forecast. A statistical forecast needs clean data, needs to be used as baseline. The historical data has to be reviewed and clean, because the algorithm, which are formula that are used, that you apply to some data, in our case, the historical data, this formula that they apply to this number, use this number in their formula. This number the formula does not tolerate gaps, so no numbers, and it reads wrongly outlier, because outlier, they go outside the trend that a time series might have. So they are not wrong data, as I said before. There is nothing wrong. It's just that from a statistical point of view, the data must be prepared for the formula to be applied. So the data cleansing looks for gaps, like Dinesh said. There were no transactions. So that there is no value. There was a reverse. Or you didn't adjust your historical data. So you need to prepare your data from Umoja for the data cleansing. Then the data cleansing takes the data and look from a mathematical point of view what is not suitable for a formula to be applied to this data. Then it does that, and it just consign to the next process this data where you can apply this formula. I don't know if I answer to this question, then we can go to the next one, which is why we need to classify.
Just I want to quickly add, David, sorry.
Dinesh, go ahead.
So if you saw yesterday in the template, there were 3 key figures, I believe, at least on the consumption. There was the consumption data, there was the adjusted consumption data, and then there was the final. So the consumption data is what directly comes from ECC. And if you see, you're not adjusting that consumption data itself, you're doing it in another key figure called adjusted consumption history. So you're not changing what took place in ECC. What took place in ECC in terms of issuance comes into IBP. You're adjusting the another key figure. on the basis of trying to create a baseline for a forecast. So you're not just going and recording or putting a different posting date in ECC. You're just making sure that you account for what happened and you're trying to create a baseline. That's, I think, Steve made a valid point there. And I think it's important to understand that there as well. That's what I wanted to quickly say here.
Yeah, that's very important. So thank you, Dinesha. Valentina, just to reply, as Cyril suggested, one of the questions, could you go to the chart that shows seasonality with trend and also the continuous with trend? So we need to, I think, to clarify the trend, seasonality, and the seasonality combinations.
I'm sorry, 1 second. I don't know what happened. I had to quickly stop sharing and share again. Okay, 1 second.
Yeah.
No
problem.
From two,
in the meantime, while Valentina is doing that, there was another question from Siad asking what is a data point. So when we explained yesterday the historical demand, we said that the system, and also on the overview from Cyril, the solution is integrated with production data of Umoja ECC. So it's getting consumption history from ECC, and the granularity that we are getting the data with is at weekly consumption. So if in the 2 years period, you don't have 5 weeks with consumption, the system, you need to have at least 5 data points. This data point is a consumption in one particular week of the year. So if you don't have consumption of at least 5 weeks, it is not enough for the system to understand what is the time series. So you need at least to have 5 to say, okay, this is intermittent, right? So a data point is a week with particular consumption of a product. Like, for example, if you have X-ray machine and you receive one in 24 months, then the system will classify as insufficient data because the system cannot forecast. Could you go, Valentina, to the trend, to the seasonal chart? Seasonality with trend, yeah. There is, and seasonality.
David, talking about insufficient data, maybe we should mention that, for example, the purchase of a car, a 4x4 will definitely be categorized as insufficient data because you don't buy a 4x4 every month. But that will be taken care in the equipment, no? So it's correct to mention this?
Yeah, so let's say that what you're saying is a typical example that for fixed assets, right. It's a common scenario that they don't have sufficient data to make a forecast, but as we said, for fixed asset and equipment, we have the equipment template that will be very helpful to formulate additional demand. So this one is a normal continuous with trend, right? And in this continuous with trend, you don't have this, let's say, ups and down so drastically. So if we go to the seasonality, for example, go back, normal seasonality.
No, I think it's before, 1 second.
Yeah, this one is okay. Yeah. So this one is continuous with seasonality. And then we see it's like a wave, right? It goes up and goes down. But it's the average value is more or less in the, it's not changing that much, right? If you imagine a line crossing through the wave, it's more or less stable. But if you go to seasonality with trend, you will see that these waves are going up. Anyway, that is not so critical, I think, for us because that's a system classifying based on patterns. So in this one, you see that there is also this wave, but it's going up. So the difference between the top and the bottom is growing. So you could have the mean of the chart will grow. But anyway, I don't know if this is. We have the mathematical models for that. If you want to go into details. But you have to consider that the system is doing that for you. And then when it's going to generate a forecast, it's going to take this time series to formulate it in a similar way. So is there any other question about the presentation, or we can jump to the demonstration and to the system? Cyril? Thank you, Wilmara. Thank you.
So I think, yes, we can go maybe to the system, and while you're demoing the system, you can address also a couple of the questions. regarding, I think it will be better. Right?
Yeah, as well. Yeah, because that's true. When we see the numbers in the system, it might be easier.
Exactly,
So,
because you have some question on data cleansing and consumption.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So thank you so much, Valentina. I will start sharing now. If you think.
All right.
I don't know if we should keep our 2 hours if they are too tired, or we should break, but I think we don't have so much time to. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm sharing my screen now. If you can confirm that. 1 second. But I have too many virtual machines. Okay. So the idea now is to I will go to the system. I will share my screen. I will take it from where we were yesterday when we were doing the historical consumption adjustments. And then it's going to be a very brief demonstration, because there is not much that we need to do. Sorry. So this is the Excel. Okay, this is the data cleansing. I'm going to open now the historical consumption template. So we started yesterday with the template number 10, all right? So number 10, and then we set also this morning, important for the exercise to filter. Okay. Okay. All right, but Dinesha, when we will do the demonstration, then the last minute we can do a recap about insufficient data. So now what the purpose of this demonstration is to explain 2 things. I'm going to stop sharing while it's loading, so you cannot. Yeah. So while it's loading the historical data, what are we going to do? Where are we, right? Let me recap a bit what we have been doing for these 3 days. And let me tell you that you think it's 3 days of training, but if you count the hours, it's like now 8 hours, no? What we, in in-person training, we will cover in 1 day. So, but we started with the overview, and then we went to the first template that was historical data, where you see some products and some historical consumption from June 2018 to the present moment. And then in the exercise, you were asked to find some products that were assigned to you under your plan. And you were asked to adjust some of them. Now, from the list of products you got, the system should have also classified your data as time series classification, as the Valentina explained, right? So you might have some intermittent, you might have some continuous with trend, you might have some with seasonality, you might have some with insufficient data, or some others with intermittent patterns. What I want to show now is that after the system has run some jobs, because this is not immediate, right? When we go to historical data, we'll adjust, then the system will run a job and will send the data from historical consumption template to data cleansing. In data cleansing, we will find if there is an outlier, and we will see what the system has done to it. And we will try to find also the gaps and see what has happened. Okay? I think for the gaps, we will see a good example of when the system is not fulfilling the gap, for you to be aware as well. So let me share again the screen. I think it already came back. Okay, so this is the historical data template, right? And I have 2 products here. One of the products that I want to show is the 160 sending in 738. So I'm going to filter to get the product. So yeah, I'm filtering in 2 steps because I want you to see first all the products, and then we go to one particular product ID. All right, now it's already selected ID, so I don't do the mistake I did yesterday. And this is one of the products that I'm going to use. And the second one I want to show to you is, and I take advantage from this to show you how you can show multiple products at the same time. So I'm going to show as well 1, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 30. I hope you are with me, because you are very quiet. So I hope you're following the presentation, the demonstration. So
David,
yeah.
Sorry, this is Francia. Just a question, because I tried this manually today. So basically, in that filter, can you return that screen? The one that you were just...
Of course, and thank you for the question. Otherwise, I feel like no one is listening. So
okay, so in there, I was copy-paste every one of the examples that I received of the 12 lines. So basically, it's possible just to go to the side.
Yeah,
and
you can either put the number and then this symbol here. Semicolon. It's called yes. Semicolon. Okay, semicolon, I think. Or if you go to the 3 dots and you start searching them, if you check them here, they will all appear in the report. Okay. Now, but the list is too long, no? So maybe it's better. What I do is I search for them first. Like I can show another one. 1, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 3, 2. And then if you check it here, it will appear on your report. So in this way, you can get only your products or your commodities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And thank you for trying as well. When you are trying when you are playing around with the tool, try whatever you think, because you might also discover some new features. Now, so let's take this first product. Okay, what is it? This one, the needle. Let's talk about needles. So the needles are, we have consumption history and we have final consumption history and adjusted. This product was already adjusted. The consumption history was adjusted for September and October. But let me go to see the rest of the numbers. So if we go through the series, we might see that there are some values that are higher than others, or this one, for example, or this one, right, in another product. So some values are too high compared to other consumption. For example, in November, we have of the clothes, we have 941, and here we have less. And also we have some zeros here. So let's go now to data cleansing to see how the system is going to deal with these high values. Actually, I thought I had also another outlier on the needles. So let me take a second look. If you see, we will see now in data cleansing. But my point is that from the time series, you might find already some values that are too high. Or if we display this on the chart, for example, and we explained that the other day as well, how to show the chart, you have to click here, you select your final consumption history, you add to the time series, and then if you want to see only one product, you can select this one and click on the filter. So we can see here there is a zero in August in the chart. And also there is in December 620. In March 941. This looks to me like as an outlier. But of course the system will do all the mathematical calculation to see if this is really an outlier. Now another thing I need to mention, we did an adjustment and we saved. So we have final consumption history that contains the adjusted values, right? When you do the test, if you modify everything and you forget to click on save data, you will not be able to continue to the next exercise. Is this clear? Remember, you always have to save data after you do your adjustments. But it's not only that. After you change, there is another tab here, the sales history tab. We are skipping it because we are not selling that much, but we can discuss it offline if your entity is selling and you need to plan demand based on sales. But if we go to the last tab, which is called input for automatic cleansing, this is a check you need to do before you go to the next one. Oh, I I don't know. I should copy the filter first. So 1 second. So if I go here, I'm going to copy the filters, right? I click on edit view. All right, whatever. This is saving. And I will take the filter. I will copy it to the last tab. So we only see what we were looking at consumption history. Can someone tell me out loud how I copy the filter from consumption history to input for automatic cleansing? Maybe someone from Unmis? How do I copy a filter to see if you are there with me?
David, this is Ziad.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, go to the, you see the 2 pages on the right-hand side?
Yes.
Yeah, you click on that, and then you choose the filter on the copy setting.
Yeah.
And from consumption history.
Okay.
And you choose the last input to automatic cleansing.
Okay.
And you copy.
All right.
And okay.
Okay. Shall I also select the rest of the things?
No, not necessarily.
And not necessarily, or I should avoid copying attributes and key figures and these things?
Well, you should avoid.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So this is to copy the filter. Thank you. Thank you. Double thank you, because you are brave and you were right. So thank you for replying. So if I go now to input for automatic cleansing, I should get these values. Very good. And then you have here a key figure that is called final history consumption and sales product plant. And this one should show us the same as we have in consumption history. If for some reason after you adjust, you come here and the values are not yet, let's say, copied as final history like this one, it's because there is a job in the system that needs to be run. You will tell us for the training environment and we will run it. Now, if this is already here, I can go to the next template and see if the system has done the automatic data cleansing with these outliers, right? So this will help us understanding that if in this consumption history, as I said, this is wrong, and part of this consumption that you see here, we are talking about clothes, but this is applicable to service. If this 941 is not real consumption that happened, but this consumption goes here, if something is from February, something is from January, or this consumption in December should go from, part of it is in October, pending service entry sheet that were processed. We need to adjust it, because otherwise the system might be considering these outliers and might be cutting them out. So let me go to the other template, which is auto cleansing. All right, to open the template, or maybe I open the template so you get very familiar with the process. So I'm going to open the template. And this template has something new that you need to understand. So please pay attention. I know it's late, it's almost 2 hours, but so we select the template auto cleansing, and now we apply the filter for our training because we have access to everything. Sorry, plant, and then IL20. But notice here, actually, before entering that, you have to pay attention to the bottom of the page. I don't know if you realized yesterday about it. Huh? I'm asking you, do you know how to use this? When you are in the planning view, I think Valentina explained it very clearly, but sometimes when we go to different template, we don't realize. This template has 4 different tabs. And if you see here, product sublocation, product plant, commodity planning group, commodity plant. Can someone tell me what is this product sublocation, product plant, commodity planning group, commodity plant? Can someone tell me what do you think is this relation between products and sublocations, or products and plants? Any idea of what this can mean? May I have someone from OJSRS giving me an idea? Or someone from UNGSC?
Many are responding already,
Okay.
the planning level.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Exactly, the planning level.
All the credit goes to Elizabeth, George.
Yeah, thank you. I was afraid we had to start all the way from the beginning. So yeah, that's the planning level. So for auto cleansing, unless Dinesh or Casper correct me, I'm going to recommend you to go to the product plan for this exercise, all right? Because we want to see after we have adjustments on the historical data, I will recommend you, for the sake of the exercise, to do it at product plan level so you understand the logic. Okay, there is some feedback. So, but of course, as we said at the first day, the planning level is pretty much like a planning decision that you have to understand what makes more sense for you to do. For the sake of the exercise, I'm going to select product plant, and then I'm going to apply here the filter. Right, let me finish because it's only a matter of showing what the system is doing, and then the presentation will be out. I mean, the demonstration, and then we can discuss and we can start clarifying more points. But I think for the full class, it's better to get an idea of the easiest example first. So while the system, while the solution is loading the data for auto cleansing, let's see what we expect using this screen that we have here. We said that we have outliers. So once I will see the products, I'm going to explain two things. First one, we will review classification, time series classification that Valentina explained in the presentation. Then we will see the historical data. I mean, we will see also the historical data and how it has been classified. Then we will go to the product, clothes, medical stuff, large, to see if the outlier has been corrected or reduced. And then we will go to the zero to see what the system has done with it. And we will clarify a very important point that I think we need to insist on it. Because the system is filling gaps, remember, it's not filling zeros. So now it's preparing data, so we are almost there. So almost there, okay. And then we have clothes, we have gloves, and we have needles as a main product that we need to review. But since I only filter by the plant, we should get all of them. Okay, remember that the performance also in the training environment, and through Citrix is a bit worse. Okay, I think we are fine, but I wanted to show product plant, I think. So I go to the other tab. Actually, I don't know if I did something wrong within the filter. Okay, here it is. Okay, so let's see first time series classification. Pay attention to this column here and remember what Valentina explained before. So we have some products that have been classified as intermittent with seasonality. So if we could see, let me hide some columns so you see more space on the right side. Okay, maybe I can even hide the distribution of the product. So you see, for example, this product that is ending in 9. If you look at the final history, you see some consumption on August, some consumption on November, some consumption on June, etc. So this is considered as intermittent with seasonality. We have another one that is continuous, right? And it's continuous with seasonality. And a good way to, let's say, to confirm what the system is telling us is to use a chart. Fortunately, when I show the chart, I get all the columns and hide again. So this one is classified as continuous with seasonality. And we see a lot of numbers, but with our own eyes, we cannot classify that immediately. But if we take the key figure and we display it, and we filter by a product, hopefully we can see again the trend or the seasonality. You see the seasonality? This consumption, the consumption of this product is subject to seasonality ups and downs. You see it, right? And then we can go and see some other classifications. I mean, as you can see in this template, you don't have to do many things, and the system is doing it for you. So you should be very happy with that, because that is useful for your forecasting. We have another one that is continuous with seasonality. Let me go down because we have some other patterns. Insufficient data. Look, insufficient data. It contains only one. Maybe we'll need to review with Casper and Inesha, because the job actually in the training environment added some numbers there that maybe it's something that we need to review on this scenario. Okay, so basically, as I said, you have a lot of different consumption patterns, and the system is classifying them based on the historical data. Any question about time series classification? Now that you see it, how the system is doing it, intermittent with seasonality, continuous with seasonality. Look, continuous with seasonality and trend. Maybe we want to show this one. But please, if you have any question or comment, also if you think it's clear, that's also fine too. That would be good also to know. Let me display this one that is continuous with seasonality and trend. So, any question, Cyril? Any comment?
No, I'm asking them to confirm if everything is clear, but not question.
Okay, so this one is identified as seasonality with trend, because you see some up, down, and then go up again, and then in average is growing. So also, Dinesha, if you want to add anything, please feel free. Okay. All right, so that about time series classification as you're going to see it in the system. Of course, remember that whenever I explain this thing, you understand a portion, but when you see it with your own eyes when you're practicing, it's much better. So remember, it's very important that you perform the exercise.
David, before you go, can you in the chart, can you put in the series the final history of the one that it was in with seasonality and trend, and the filter put that value, please?
Yeah, the seasonality with trend, you mean?
Yeah, the one
Okay.
the last one you put in the series, you put the product ID.
Sorry, I did it wrong. Sorry. Yeah.
You could put the.
Yeah, 1 second. So to use a chart, because I think it's continue with seasonality and trend, this one, right? Yeah. Remember, you have to select first as a series. I think if you do it the other way around, it also works, but our recommendation is to select as a series the key figure. And then you get, if you don't enter anything filtered, you get all the consumption together. But if you want to see it only for a product, you select the product and you filter only by that product. And then you have the chart. Now, I don't have my screen, it's not that big, so I'm going to hide something here. So what we are displaying is that needles consumption from August 2018 to May 2020. And now the system is classifying this as a seasonal with trend. You see that there is seasonality, ups and downs, and then you see that it started from a very low value. So this is actually a good classification from the system. Is that okay, Valentina?
Yeah, that's what I want. Yeah, perfect, thanks.
Thank you. So, okay, and now I'm going to show you the outlier correction thing and the gaps. Yeah.
This is Harriet. Probably my question will be addressed later or at this point. I felt that I should raise it up at this point. Now we have issues of the transport spare parts. And as we all know and we're aware that the transport spare parts have always changing part numbers, and as well, the organization is faced with a constant changing product IDs. Now, if the system has captured, say, the old product ID, how do we analyze that? Wouldn't we risk to have intermittent data, historical data, given that if we have a new spare part with a new product ID, how does the system address that? Will it link that part number?
This is an excellent question, Harriet. That's an excellent question, and let me go to the presentation, because that's where we talk about the planning level, right? So if we go to the again to the template, you will see that we have different tabs here. When we talk about spare parts, since you said and you expressed correctly that they change the product ID and also the part number, etc. For spare parts, it makes more sense to perform the planning at commodity level, right? So for the commodity, you can also, exactly, and it's also a commodity level, and it's not based on quantity. Dinesha, you want to jump in? Feel free immediately, no problem. So
no, it's okay. Continue, David.
Okay, so for spare parts that, as you described, manage them at product ID would be like crazy. They would be managed and planned at commodity level, right? So that's where it's very important, the concept of the planning level. So instead of going to this tab that's called product plan, we would go to the other one that is commodity plan, for example, if you want to plan for the full entity, spare parts, or if you want to plan only for transport, and transport has its own planning group, you would go to this tab. And the information you will receive, instead of, I don't want to go in case it takes too much time now because I didn't filter, but if you go, you will see it, instead of classified by product, you will see classified by commodity. Let me go, because we have in the example some products ID that are gloves, and then gloves have different sizes. And then for gloves, maybe it makes more sense to do it at commodity level. So you will see it now. For example, here, can you see my screen? We have this product, gloves, different type of gloves with different sizes. Now, when you are doing your planning, you might not want to plan at product ID level. You don't want to make a plan for how many large, medium, and small. Maybe you want to plan at commodity level, and then the system will derive, based on historical consumption, what percentage of gloves would be large, what percentage will be medium, what percentage will be small. To do that, if we take and we go to the other tab, and I copy the filter of the plan, not to get 100 million records. So if I copy the filter again, and I bring it from this was in product plant, and I bring it to commodity plant. Sorry if my explanation is too long, but I think it's a good moment to introduce that. So for products that you don't want to plan at product ID, but you want to do it at a commodity level, you just need to go to the other tab. Okay. And you will see the aggregated historical demand at commodity level. So now in this one, we don't see now the description, unfortunately, because that's training environment and we might have some master data missing. But here, Harriet, for spare parts, you would be adjusting and managing at commodity ID level, instead of at product ID level. Did I reply to you, Harriet? Does it help?
David, the reality of it that the gloves are a little bit easy because, you know, we know that their sizes, they're small, medium, and large, but the spare parts are different. For example, you look at the filters and, you know, different spare parts. So Iveco spare parts are not compatible, say, to Toyota spare parts. It's different, really. So I think in this example here, the practical aspect, if we could address examples that pertain to transport, because it's a major challenge in the missions. Gloves is easy to address. PPEs are easy to address as compared to the spare parts. So I think if we could look at particularly transport spare parts, you would be able to, you would help us answer more questions. Like yesterday, we had the local IBP meeting with our transport clients, and they raised really major issues that I think you could help us indicate if the system is going to address these kind of things and how the system is addressing it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Harriet. Yes, so I know, Harriet, currently the data in the system, because we've only classified the materials related to healthcare category. That's the only reason you see healthcare. Our intention is to introduce the other 8 or 7 categories, I believe. So transport is coming. But overall, the design is as such that spare parts would be brought into IBP at a commodity level, to the very point that you raised, right? If Nissan today calls it oil filter 1, 2, 3, tomorrow same part is called 4, 5, 6, ABC, it keeps changing. So it makes it harder for us to plan at what we call a product ID level. So that's one of the reasons that spare parts would be brought in at a commodity level versus a product ID. But that doesn't mean that we are neglecting the spare parts. What we've done and what would be done, what we are planning to do in this coming year, is the fact that for spare parts, we are going to maintain in the material master the part succession. You will be able to, at any given time, I know every entity has come up with their own solution, multiple stickers, multiple barcodes, but what we are going to introduce is a capability to capture the product succession in the spare part material master. And anywhere in ECC, you'll be able to search by this, either the previous part number or the old part number. So that is being introduced. But the only bottleneck that we are facing getting there is classifying the 100,000 odd spare part IDs we have, which we are going to work with UNGSC to classify. So that's in terms of identifying the spare parts. But in terms of planning for spare parts, I'm not sure whether we would necessarily want to plan the spare parts. I mean, we can plan it at a commodity level, but at the individual level, if it's an oil filter from Nissan, Toyota, etc., we're also introducing some enhancements to ECC. I think we briefly touched upon this a while ago, is that we are introducing what we call the reorder point planning and also safety stock. So for items that, I mean, it kind of goes in conjunction. There could be items that IBP would classify as insufficient, because absolutely, I mean, there's no data, there's not more than 5 data points to plan, and IBP cannot plan it because that's the criteria IBP uses it. The other thing is, one of the things is spare parts. And lastly, for segmentation, if the segmentation classifies this as a C product with a Z type of a variability, it's not so important and it has a huge variability in demand. That's what I call with a C and a Z, is that under these circumstances, rather than planning at a product ID level in IBP, we want to shift these items to ECC to be planned based on reorder point. You as the planner, in conjunction with service delivery, would set an automatic reorder point. The moment it falls below the reorder point, the system will create what we call a purchase requisition, which is equivalent of a draft shopping cart. Then you can move on to ordering. That's what we are working through. It's still work in progress on our side, but the intention is before the end of the year, we will roll this out. Hope I answered your question.
Dinesh, I will take it up with you because we are running out of time. I really need to understand this because you have mentioned one thing which was going to be my follow-up question on the segmentation. I would like to really understand how that, because if we are going to plan...
Feel free to drop an email anytime.
Yes, I will call you probably on Teams later so you can give me an insight on how that is done. Thank you.
Thank you both, yeah, we can take that offline. There are a couple of more questions on the chat. We will also reply them offline. But if I may, on the last 3 minutes, I was pending to show you something on the data cleansing, auto cleansing. Remember that you are going to receive the exercise for you to perform the same check that I'm doing. So you will do it later or tomorrow, and we are happy to assist. I came back to the auto cleansing product plan tab to see it at product level, and I filter by the 3 products that we were showing before that had some outliers and some zeros. All right. So if we look at this medical stuff, clothes, something. Remember, we had the 600 and a 900 as historical consumption. So let's review going to the right. If we still have these values, right? So we have the 600 here. Okay. And then we also had a 900. So if I represent this in the chart quickly, I select the final history, and then as a filter, I want to display this product. Remember, this is the same thing we were displaying before. I know I only have 1 minute, but it's okay. So this was the same view we had in historical data with the 900 very high number. If instead now in this key figure you have final history, and then you have other figures, and one that is called calculated clean history, which is the final, without the gaps and without the outliers. So if I represent the last one instead of final history, so this figure is after cleaning. Final history is before cleansing. This key figure is after cleansing. So if I select the one after cleansing, and I remove the previous one, we will see that the 900 was actually an outlier. The 620 remains the same, but the 940 has been carried by the system, and now it's a 775. So now it's in the boundary. So the boundary of this series was 775. So the outlier has been cut for the system to make the forecast. So if this was not real consumption, you better adjust it before, because otherwise the system is going to do its own math to make the forecast. But if we look at the zeros, as Dinesa said, actually in that time series, I wanted to have some gaps, but we didn't have gaps. So what I did was to put a 0. The system is filling gaps. Filling gaps is not filling zeros. A gap is not a 0. A 0 is a 0 consumption. So if you put a 0, the system will understand that there was 0 consumption there. But if the system sees a 0, if we go to the last key figure, after doing the gaps history, non-gaps, and the cleans history, the system will not fill this with the mean. In your exercise, I'm asking you to review if you have some gaps and if you have outliers. So you will need to be checking that. Instead, if this would be an empty month without anything, the system would have generated like a value with the average. All right. So this is what we needed to show today, and I think we ran out of time as well. So I think it's a good moment to close the session, unless there is a final question or something. Himanshu is already ready to do the closure.
Yeah, just to say thank you, David, that all the questions that have not been answered, we will try to address them later separately. So feel free to rush out to us, David, myself, Valentina, Denisha as well.
Of course.
And Casper, definitely.
And then either during this afternoon and also tomorrow morning, please, if you have any issue, write to us and we will be contacting you. Valentina did already, Casper and myself, and also Cyril have been checking that. So we will support and we will assist individually any of you. Please, if you got stuck on the navigation, don't get disappointed, because the exercise that you got today is very easy to check, so you can really catch up if the system allows you. And I forgot to mention something we will mention tomorrow about how to work with the templates in offline mode that will allow you to improve. And if you have any performance issue, maybe I will give you that advice on the back end of the training room. Casper, you want to say something? Anybody to close? I'm over to you, Casper, Himanshu, Valentina, anyone?
David, can I ask one quickie?
Yes.
This is Ziad.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we go back to the sheet 10 historical sheet. Now, how the data cleansing will be inputted in the automatic cleansing tab? I mean, this part you have skipped it.
So you, after you enter the data in the historical sheet, right? And you click on save. If you click on save, I think in the exercise it says we need to run a job. The system will do it automatically, but in the training environment, you can tell me, you can send me a message and say, David, I saved data. I want to go to data cleansing. If it's not there yet, I will run the job for you.
Okay.
Okay. I run the job already, so if you do new adjustments, you just let me know, and the data will appear in automatic cleansing.
Okay, so when you run the sheet 20, it will automatically populate the automatic cleansing tab in the historical sheet. Okay.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. For you,
okay,
for you, it's automatic, but we do something in the system for this to happen.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, that's all from my side. Casper, you want to add something?
No, I think it's correct what you're mentioning. So we are still in the developing phase. At some point, we will determine when the system will run these batches or these jobs in the background. But for now, please reach out to us to ask us to run this job. If it's not populated in the template 20, do let us know, and we will run it in the background.
Okay, so that's all. Cyril, Himanshu, I think we can close here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes.
Himanshu?
No, that's fine. We can close here. Let's start next week again.
True, it's Friday.
I know.
Okay. Okay. So have a good weekend, and we are here. And if you want to try it on Saturday, you can contact me as well on Saturday. No problem. Okay.
Thank you, David.
Bye bye.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Valentina.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Goodbye. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. See you next week.